Hey guys, welcome to the TIE 2020 online edition. My name is Jason Byerly. I'm the Information Media Specialist at Canyon Lake Elementary in Rapid City. Today's presentation is titled Using the Rigor Relevance Framework to Design STEAM Units. I've sort of modified the Rigor Relevance Framework into a scaffolded approach to help me design STEAM units. I'll kind of get into the why I've done that, how I've done that, and show you some examples. So hopefully we can take some new learning away and apply it into our classrooms. And we'll get right into it. First, anybody else? I mean, I've seen like an adult, like a real adult, like in the last 5 days, like a handful of times only, and it was a good feeling. So if anybody's feeling that way, I'm right there with you. Session outcomes. I'll just read that quick description. This session will help attendees understand how to utilize the Rigor Relevance Framework to design STEAM units for instruction. Using this modified framework to plan instruction allows teachers to strategically plan scaffolded experiences for students so they can gradually master necessary skills along the way to completing the unit project. Attendees will leave with examples of how to design STEAM units of instruction that help students build upon previously learned material and take control of their learning by applying what they have learned to solve real-world problems. So we've got two goals today. Attendees will understand the Rigor Relevance Framework, kind of understand how it works and how it was designed. And number two, attendees will understand how to utilize that framework to design STEAM units. That's the important one. How can I take this information and build out some units of instruction that I can use with my students? So we've set up a little back channel. If you see the link at the top, that slides link, if you click on that, it will take you to a place where you can ask questions. And I know we're not live right now, but I think it'll still be available with that link, so people can constantly go and ask questions and share ideas there. So I'm kind of excited to see what happens and what kind of information is shared there. I'll just click on that for you so you can kind of get a preview of that. And so that was me. That was just my post. So even if you're watching this video at a later time, you can click on that. Okay, so our why. Why are we designing units of instruction like this? I used to teach third grade many years ago, it feels like anyway, and I came across Don Wettrick and some of his work with Genius Hour, and I was like, I have to do that. I think it was actually at a TIE conference, most likely. And so I bring it back. Genius Hour is about allowing kids freedom and time in your class to kind of learn about what they're interested in. And we brought it back, and we brainstormed ideas and didn't really know what we were doing. And what happened is we saw a ton of passion with kids, and then they ended up stalling out on their projects. And I'm like, why? We're giving them the time, we're giving them some information, like they're able to choose, right? They get to do what they want. And it just did not really go. It didn't really have a good feel. And later on, I'm kind of thinking it was almost like construction workers with no tools. They knew their job. They knew that they liked tigers. They knew they liked baseball or video games, but they didn't really have any background knowledge or skills to do anything with that. Knowledge is important, but you need some of that skills, and that's why we're going to get into some scaffolding layering of instruction so that we can provide students with some skills, with some instruction, and allow them to kind of gradually work up this ladder until they're solving real-world problems. I now strive to provide them with experiences in a wide range of skills, tools, and apps so that they can decide which tools make the most sense in solving a real-world problem. Think of it like a tool belt. I'm going to come back to that later in this presentation, but we want to, if kids leave our room with a tool belt of skills and apps that they can say, hey, this problem needs this app to solve, or this problem needs these two skills that I know how. They can use what they have to solve problems, and that's kind of where we're at. We want to, and I was not doing that earlier. I was not providing them with any tools. I was just providing them with time and passion, maybe, which is important, but they needed some sort of tool and scaffolding system. And if you can see also on the screen, we've got the 4 C's. There's a lot of different variations of that, but this is the kind of thing we want to see in class. We want them to be thinking critically. We want them to be creative, think outside the box. We want to be working with others and collaborating. And lastly, we want to communicate. We want to share our ideas. So those are kind of important things that are found in our class as well. So now, here is the Rigor Relevance Framework. If you can see right here, it kind of goes A, B, C, D. And so we kind of start, you can kind of see, you've seen some of these categories before, but you start at the lower end where you're you're just learning information, you're not really doing much with it, and you're working all the way up to you're applying your skills into solving real world problems. And so you can see right here, we're kind of learning. I'm actually going to flip this next slide, I think. So basically here at the bottom, we're just learning information. They're not really doing much with it. Then we move to quadrant B. I'll flip back for you. Quadrant B, now we're starting to apply a little more. Students use some knowledge that they have to apply and to solve problems. And then what happens is now our once we get to here, then we move up and we actually start getting a little bit more information. Students extend and refine that acquired knowledge to be able to use that knowledge automatically. So now we've kind of learned some information, we applied it a little bit, now we're actually getting a little bit more knowledge and a little bit more skills. And then that quadrant D adaptation, that's where we're creating, that's where we're evaluating, that's where we're solving real world problems with all of these skills that we've learned. Yeah, and I've kind of modified that. Basically, the idea is that we're going to provide some information in a scaffolded format. The IWU model where I'm providing some information, we kind of do some, then the next step is we kind of do some information or we do some challenges together. I'm kind of taking away some of that support, and then at the end, you are doing it on your own. And so that's something I've never done before. In that, going back to Genius Hour, we were just saying, hey, create a project, do something you love, but they just didn't have that schema, they didn't have that background knowledge or the skills to say, or the skill experiences where I was like, hey, let's do this together. I was just basically throwing them in. And so here there's a little bit more of a scaffolded approach, which we've seen kids take new tools and new skills and really apply them, where we're seeing kids get to that D quadrant, applying skills, solving real world problems with the information they learned in some of these quadrants, where it used to be kids would just get stuck and they would never be able to apply it. And I think that was because we just were not providing enough scaffolded support in those experiences. Okay, so this is kind of how I lay out my year. We start with some quadrant skill units. I'm going to show you that. When I say quadrant, I'm kind of referring to that Rigor Relevance framework. And basically, I've decided, hey, what do we need? What are some really cool skills that we need? What are some apps? What are some things that they need to know? And we're going to kind of learn them in isolation, but they are applying some stuff in there. Then we start moving into some MAKERSPACE challenges, which is kind of, Mr. Byerly is still providing the challenge, but they can use some of these skills that they've learned so far in a scaffolded approach to solve some of these challenges. So there might be the same challenge, but multiple solvings. Lastly, we move to passion-based projects near the end of the year where they're really using this design thinking process where they're being empathetic. They're really looking at the world and saying, identifying problems and how can I solve these? And they're using all of these skills that they've learned before. With the Genius Hour example, it was just a passion-based project. We were just skipping right there. They didn't really have any information. They didn't really have the skills to really go forward with it. So let's kind of get into that. And so here's some quadrant examples, and I'll link this later so you can go back in. But if I was going to teach the app Flip a Clip, it's kind of an animation. Quadrant A, I'm establishing a baseline set of skills. How do you do some really basic stuff that you just need to know? Then you move to quadrant B. Follow my step-by-step instructions to build something. So they're going to be doing something, but I'm going to be right there with them step by step. Then we move up to C. The knowledge is getting a little bit more intense, where they're actually doing something on their own. I'm still providing the challenge. Maybe they're brainstorming it, but they're doing it without my support. There's the gap where they had some support and now they don't. And then lastly, they're doing something to solve a real-world problem. How can I use this tool? This is one tool in their holster, in their tool belt that they can use to decide. And eventually they'll have a bunch of tools and, this real-world problem, I can use this to solve it. Okay. So kind of the same thing. We've got some Scratch Junior is an app that I would use a quadrant approach for. I teach some very basic stuff. This one we're doing it together. This one they're doing it on their own with my very limited support. And then they're using that game to solve, or they're using that app to solve a real-world problem. Docery, it's a whiteboard app. Same thing. Very basic skills. This is what you need. This is like us doing it together. They're kind of working on their own. And I'm going a little bit fast through these, but you can always pause and check it out later. And I'll have the link. And then how can I use this app to solve a real world problem? That's where we want to get. We want to get up here and say, all right, this is another tool in my belt. I see this real world problem. How can I solve it? I might use something, the Dosery app. I might use Scratch Junior. I might use Flip-A-Clip. Okay. Okay. So if you were starting from scratch, what would you do? You have your app, you have your tool. What would you do? You would decide what is the crucial information. What do they need? That goes right here. Move to B. Provide a challenge where they're following step by step. So now you're doing something, but you're still in control. They're doing it with you. Up here is where you kind of are doing similar challenges, but we're removing that support. They don't really get it unless they need it. And then D, they're saying, hey, get together and say, how can we use this tool to solve that real world problem? Okay, so now we've kind of halfway through the year, whatever, we've gone through all of our skills. You know, who knows what that timeline looks like. Then we move to some MAKERSPACE challenges. These are challenges that are with a given dilemma, but they can solve the problems in a variety of ways. And so learners are starting to rely on some of the skills, tools, and apps that they've learned to solve these problems. I'm going to click on ones just so you can see. Here's a challenge, the Arcade Blues. You can go back in there and check that out later. But they would be given a challenge, but then they can start using some of those quadrant skills and tools that they've learned and apply them to solve those problems. And people might use different skills and different tools to solve the same problem. Lastly, we get to passion-based projects. Passion-based challenges where we're at that almost that quadrant D, right? Like take what you really love. Learners rely on their design thinking process to help identify and solve real world problems. Mr. Byerly was in charge of identifying most of the challenges and problems before. Now it's you guys. Let's be empathetic. Let's look at our world and say, what can we do? Maybe if we look at the pollution problem, you know, are we making videos to help people make them more aware? Are we being artists and making live links to facts or apps that help them know where they can recycle? If a kid is new to school, are we building an interactive map? With our current health crisis, are we creating videos that show the importance, or do we have artistic visual reminders on the walls at school? How can we use our skills that we've learned throughout the year? How can we take them from our tool belt or a holster and apply them? That's where this passion-based challenge is. I love tigers. I identify a problem with tigers, and I'm going to use all the tools I've learned so far to create a solution for that, or create a project for that, and that's where we want to get. And so now we're going to revisit our why. I'm going kind of fast because I think I might only have 15 minutes on my screen recording, so we got a little bit more. But why are we doing this? Why do we have this approach? Why do we use this scaffolded approach and this ladder? At the end of the day, we want our learners to be able to walk away with a full tool belt of knowledge, experiences, and skills, ready to solve the challenging problems our society is facing. I've always seen learners having an eye for identifying and wanting to solve problems they may be facing. However, until now, they just didn't have the tools. I had not provided them the support. I had not provided them necessarily the skills. We had just kind of jumped in, which was good. We had that passion. That's important. But now I'm seeing my students have a full tool belt and say, Mr. Byerly, I see that problem and I can solve it with this way. And another student might see the same problem and say, you know what? That's your skill set. My skill set is over here, and I also have a different skill or a different app or a different tool that I might solve it with. You know, think about any problem. I might use a 3D printer to solve that. I might use a video app to solve with. I might use my artistic skill and create a poster. There's lots of different ways and lots of different skills that we want our students to have, and then be able to apply in solving these real world problems. Okay, so. I hope we see some questions on the back channel. I hope this was informational. Please contact me. You can find me at a few different places. My YouTube channel is where I produce most of my content. So if anything, go there and you might get some ideas about what to do or what not to do for sure. Definitely email me. I'm always looking to share ideas, and I'm really glad for this opportunity to be able to talk about how we've kind of used this modified framework to design STEAM units. So I'm excited. I'm really excited for what you guys have learned. I'm really excited to see what you create. And so stay safe, everyone, and have a good day.